just like these suds on top, just like these suds on top.
Good evening, I'm Ian Butler, and welcome to Wavelength, the show where we talk to local people about local issues in the hope of getting everybody a little bit more on the same wavelength. Tonight's guest is an author. She wrote this book right here, which is called When Life Throws You Lemons, Make Cranberry Juice, which when I first heard that title, I thought, that doesn't quite make sense. But then I figured it out because I read the book. And so Shari Bookstaff is the guest, and she will tell us all about it right here, right now.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Shari. I really appreciate you coming down to the station here and being on the show here.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. So your story, I guess, is that you're a marine biologist from Wisconsin.
From Wisconsin, yes.
And you moved out to San Francisco, to Pacifica, because there's an ocean here. There's
an ocean here, yes.
And then you had something happen to you. I had an unexpected thing. Tell us about
that. Well, I was
that.
going pretty well. I had a pretty thriving career. Mm-hmm. I was a single mom. My kids were 12 and 8. And then I started getting dizzy and nauseous. Went to the doctor for many months. They misdiagnosed me. Mm-hmm. And then finally they said, you have a brain tumor that has to be removed right away, because it was a pretty large
Okay, that's
tumor.
Good size, like a golf ball or so?
It was like a golf ball. It looked like a golf ball on my scans. Mm-hmm. So they said it would be a really easy operation. They actually used the word routine, to which I said, routine brain surgery? Okay. But, they said...
These things happen. My girlfriend had a similar surgery, actually.
Oh, really?
These people have them, yes.
Right,
so
and they said
sort
it
of
was
routine.
pretty common. If you have to have a brain tumor, this is the one to get. Mm-hmm. And I said, but why do I have to have a brain tumor? Yeah. But anyway, so they said it'd be easy. I thought I'd be in the hospital for 5 to 10 days, come home. They said, no, I wouldn't need any rehab or anything. I would be able to go right back to work. So I was planning to go right back to work. Mm-hmm. Well, something went wrong during or right after the surgery. Mm-hmm. And it was a type of stroke that affected my cerebellum. So I ended up being in the hospital for almost 9 months.
9 months.
Instead of 5 to 10 days.
That's a lot more than 5 to 10 days.
And a lifetime
by my
of
calculations.
rehab, yeah.
Uh-huh. Wow, and then of course, after the 9 months, that doesn't mean that you were suddenly better.
No.
There were many more steps.
But I got to come home after 9 months.
Right, I'm sure that was a nice feeling.
Yes, and actually, spending the 9 months in the hospital sounds horrific, and it was horrific, but if I had come home earlier, I would have been in a hospital bed the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. So I went to a rehab place, a brain rehab place, and got better. So when I came home, I was walking with a walker instead of lying in a hospital bed. And, eventually through therapy and a lot of just giving myself therapy in my kitchen, just walking along, holding onto the counter, I'd walk. Then, I got better, went to a cane, and then to walking on my own.
I know it was a really slow process. I think you were saying that day to day you didn't see any progress, but if you look back, okay, after 6 months you've made this new step. After 6 months there's another one, and after enough 6 month periods, right, you actually get some real progress.
I remember at one point where I could stand unassisted for 9 seconds.
Oh boy!
And I'll tell this to when I'm giving a talk, I'll tell this to my audience after I've been standing there for an hour talking. So it's like, yes, I did make progress.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, a lot of people have been through trauma and experiences, but they didn't write a book about it, right? So what motivated you to write this?
Well, when I came out on the other side of this, one thing is that I had the ability to speak, and I had the ability to, I'm a teacher. I've been a biology professor at Skyline College since 1990. So I've got no fear of speaking in public, so I really did want to be able to talk when I was done. And the book kind of came out of emails to friends in the middle of the night. It was very cathartic. It came out of very sad and very just venting. But then when you put it into a book and you actually want people to read the book, you can't just be negative. So it kind of forces you to look on, to give it another, not a spin, but to give it another side of looking at things.
So you're looking at both the challenges, but also the positive sides of that, in other words.
Right, or just the yes, I can stand more than 9 seconds now, those kind of things, And I could still go whale watching, and I could still go back to teaching, and I could still do all of these things. And, I say in the book, too, that when I went back to teaching, it was amazing that my job was still there after, almost 2 years off. And I equated that to when Joe Montana was injured, and when he came back, his job was gone. Hey, my job was more secure, So it was, in a way, having that education and having that job really did save my life, because I was able to go back and keep my house and go back to what I love to do and, raise my children. So.
Yeah, well, I guess the really important thing is in one's life is to have a purpose. So going to work, doing these things, and having your family, you had a purpose, but also, writing this and sharing your story is another purpose.
Sharing my story and inspiring other people to also work hard to achieve their goals was another part of my story. Yeah. Also, when I came out the other end of this, the other part of my story that I chose to exemplify was that how patients are treated when they're in the hospital.
Oh, so you have an insider's perspective.
And I was
on that.
treated sometimes really nice and empathetically, but sometimes really downright rude and just not very nice or empathetic. And I thought, there's such a wide variety of the way you're being treated. Why is that? And so one thing that I decided to do when I went to the other side of this is that, yes, I can go out and talk. I'm not afraid of public speaking. So I would go out and talk to students of healthcare professions and share my story and give them tips on expressing empathy to their patients and the importance of having empathy for their patients.
Yeah, empathy is a big part of that.
So
we could talk about that a little bit, that you're actually helping to train people to be more empathetic.
Right.
And how to go about that. So tell us, explain the title. When life gives you lemons, make cranberry juice.
Make cranberry juice.
What does that mean?
You know that when you're going through any kind of a hard time, people come up to you and they don't know what to say. So they'll say things like, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. You have to be positive. You need to smile more. God won't give you anything you can't handle. They say all the cliches, including when life throws you lemons, make lemonade. And those cliches might be okay sometimes, because they do give you words to say rather than avoiding somebody. But when somebody said those to me, I just wanted to punch them in the face. So when I went to write my book, and I went for a title of my book, instead of when life throws you lemons, make lemonade, because that implies turning lemons into lemonade. So taking your troubles and twisting them to pretend they're really positive.
The bad things really are bad.
And the bad things really are bad.
It's not a good thing to have a stroke. It's just not.
Right, it's not. Nobody would choose to have a stroke.
Right.
So when I went to make my title, this actually turned into one of my mantras, because I see cranberries as the sweet parts of life that you need to accept into your heart in order to deal with your lemons. So lemons are still going to be there. They're still going to be horrific.
So you're talking about a blend, and you put some lemon and you put some cranberry, some sugar, and you have this new beverage. Is that the idea?
Right. Lemon and cranberry juice.
Yeah.
And where that came from actually is when I was the naturalist on a cruise to Alaska. The 2 free drinks were lemonade and cranberry juice. And I loved the mixture of it. So
I see.
it's a sweet and sour.
So you think of cranberries are these little things that happen in your life, these little positive things that help.
Little positive things that are really easy to overlook and hard to accept. Whereas we all know lemons are huge. I mean, sometimes they're not even that huge. Sometimes they're, your car won't start. It's a lemon.
Right. But the car could be a lemon too.
The car could be a lemon too. And then the cranberry could be, you get into the car, you turn on the radio, their favorite songs on the radio. The cranberry doesn't have to be related to the lemon.
Right, sure. But you just find those positive little
find
things.
those little sweet things that kind of turn a little knob in your head, in your heart. Change your internal scenery, and then you can deal with the lemons.
Yeah, well, that makes sense now, see? That's good.
There you go.
I like to think in terms of it going a little bit sideways. When you have come up to an obstacle, you go around the obstacle. You find this new direction, a new way to get forward, and it seems like that's what you've done.
Sometimes you do that, yes. That's actually what your brain does when it's healing. your brain
right.
pathways, neuroplasticity. Your brain finds new neural pathways. And that's why you're never going to stop getting better after a brain injury. You can always, there's always something about your body that can get stronger, or a new neural pathway that can be developed.
And there's things that you can do to develop those, right?
There's things that you can do.
It's not just a matter of waiting until your brain gets better, but you can actively...
There's always work you can do. That's why I say you have to work hard to achieve any kind of goal. And you have to have the right people in your life who are going to encourage you to work hard.
You need a support group.
You need a support group. You need I had a trainer. It was at Skyline College. I went to the adaptive physical education program, and my trainer there really pushed me, because it was more of a coach pushing somebody rather than a physical therapist pushing me. It was more of a coach.
You had your coach.
And he pushed me hard.
Was it Muhammad?
No, Muhammad was the occupational therapy.
Oh, okay.
Therapist, a different.
See, I did read the book, but I forgot some.
You read the book? No, but he really pushed me so hard, and no matter how hard he pushed me, I never cried. Like, he never made me cry. He never made me feel like I couldn't do anything. He had this, I don't know, maybe it's just experience, but he had a sixth sense about when to have me back off a little bit. But he would have me doing things that I'm like, he would tell me what he wanted me to do, and I'm like, no, I can't do that, it's crazy. And then he would be like, just try it. So, and I'd do it.
He'd push you to the edge, but not push you over the edge.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And he knew just where the edge was.
Yes. If you haven't cried yet, he hasn't gotten you over the edge.
Right. And he never made me cry, so that was good.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he did it with love and care.
Yeah.
You knew that he was on your side, no matter how hard he was pushing you.
I trusted him.
Yeah.
If you didn't trust him, you're not going to. You have to trust the person who's helping you. So I trusted him.
Yeah.
So I did whatever he told me to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know there's other things in your life that you get joy from. Dogs.
Dogs.
A big part of your life, aren't they?
I have 4 dogs.
Four dogs,
yes.
Yeah. And are they specially trained dogs?
One of the dogs that I have, who chose not to, he's kind of in semi-retirement, so he didn't come tonight. One of my dogs is a service dog.
Service dog, yeah.
And I've had him for 9 years.
Oh, boy.
He's 11.
Yeah.
And he's fully trained from Canine Companions. And, he was great. I mean, when I brought him with me places, it just opened up so many doors for me. Yes, he was physically trained to pick things up when I dropped them and open doors and everything.
He literally could open doors.
He could
for
literally
you.
open doors.
Yeah.
But he did so much more for me, even just socially. Just people wanted to be, people at work wanted to be on my committee because the dog would be there. My students loved him. He was great to have around.
I know another thing that you've derived joy from in the book is Steve Young.
I do like Steve Young.
Tell about that.
I'll tell you my favorite Steve Young story. I've been a fan of Steve Young since, a long time. Probably since I moved to California in 1986. I was always Team Steve, not Team Joe. Sorry, Joe.
Me too. I'm the same age as Steve Young, so I always felt when he got bumped up, I kind of felt like I went up with him. And Joe Montana was my older brotother's age, so I'm like, yeah, go get him.
Right, Steve. My favorite Steve Young story, though, was I went to go see him when he was the Grand Marshal of the Pumpkin Fest parade.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's on the Grand Marshal. He's on a truck, and I was sitting on the sideline of the parade in a wheelchair, wearing a Steve Young jersey. He saw me wearing that jersey. He jumped off the truck and came over to me to sign my jersey.
That's
and
awesome.
I gave him a copy of the book. But it was amazing that he actually jumped off the truck. I was like, did that really happen?
Oh, he's a good guy.
He's a really good guy.
He is a good guy.
And I've seen
great.
him many times. He actually signed my service dog's jersey. My service dog wears a jersey to Niner games.
Oh, really?
And he signed his jersey one time, too.
Wow.
So he knows us by now, because we see him almost every month.
Yeah, you're pals.
Yeah, he's like, oh, hi, guys.
Well, it's so great that he was kind of your dream to get to know him, and now you did.
He was, and yes, he's very nice.
That's a big, big cranberry.
It's a big cranberry. It's kind of one that goes on and on and on.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit more about this empathy training, because that's like a big part of what you do now.
Right.
And in fact, we even have some graphics that you've made for that.
Right. One thing I tell my group when I'm doing the empathy training, I mean, they have empathy. I'm going to go in thinking that if they didn't have empathy, they wouldn't be going into this field. So my thing is I'm going to teach them ways to express the empathy. Because they already have the empathy, so they always need to express it. And honestly, if you're having a bad day, you know, they're still people. They could have bad days too. So I share with them my mantras that I've lived by and that have gotten me through some real pretty dark days and some just, you know, annoying days too. One of them, you already heard, is one that says lemons make cranberry juice. So accept your cranberries.
Yeah. Okay, so here, they put this up on here.
Oh,
let's read
okay,
this part now.
So one thing that I do is I have these four mantras that I've actually made an acronym for because I like them so much. The acronym is CHARGED, CHARGED, as you can see on there. The first one is focus on what you can change. So
We
what
can go
I
to
find,
the next graphic then for focus on what you
focus on
can
what you can
change. There we are.
So I took that picture in Alaska this summer,
Nice.
actually. But what, you know, it's really important to, and you've heard, you know, focus on what you can control. There's always something in your life that you can change. If everything else seems hopeless, you know, I talked about neuroplasticity. Well, my nerves weren't going to regenerate, but my nerves could form a new pathway.
Right. So
And
that's what you
there's
can
something
change.
that you can change. So think about any situation that you get into, there's something you can change. CJ. The R stands for resources. Do the best you can with
Next,
the resources
yes.
that you have. Everyone has limited resources in some way.
Except Elon
Either
Musk.
He's limited too. He doesn't have the social.
He's limited in empathy, actually. He needs your training.
And niceness, you know. But everybody's limited, either in social skills, financial, physical. There's something that you're limited in. But there's other resources that you have that you're good at. One example I give for this, when my son was in high school and had to go to robotics tournaments, the other parents would drive them to these tournaments, park, help them bring all their equipment in. Well, I could drive them there, but I couldn't help them bring stuff in. But nobody else wanted to drive to San Jose and drive them back. So I would do that. I would drive them all the way to San Jose. I would hang out in San Jose for the day and then drive them all back. And nobody else wanted to do that. So that was a resource. My driving ability was a resource that I could use, even though I couldn't literally help them bring in the equipment.
Right.
So that was good. The G is for goals. Modify your goals, but stay true to yourself. Every motivational speaker says, you know, never give up on anything, never give up on your goals. They'll come true eventually. And I would agree with that to a point, but I would also say that sometimes it's okay to modify those goals.
Well, it's like when you're a
Stay
kid,
true to yourself.
people say, you can be anything you want to be when you grow up. Well, that's not necessarily true.
Right,
You have to
it's
be
not.
realistic. So this,
You have to be realistic.
along those
and also,
lines.
I mean, like when I went back to teaching, I couldn't stand up and, you know, give a lecture 3 times a week, but I loved working on the computer, so I could do online teaching. So when I went back, I did a lot of online teaching, but I still taught my animals class. I still taught marine biology. I still do teach those classes, but all online. So my methods of teaching changed, but I stayed true to what I wanted to teach and what I love to do. And then the last one, the D is for difficult. Don't be afraid to try something new and difficult. Trying new and difficult things is the way that your brain grows and your brain finds those new neural pathways. The reason that this mantra is over this picture, this is a picture of common dolphins that I took on one of the first whale watching trips that I went on after my brain tumor and stroke. And it was, you know, really tough because I could barely walk. So you're walking down a dock that's moving, onto a boat that's moving. And it was really difficult. And obviously I couldn't do it the same way that I had done before. So I had to modify my goals, but I could still sit and take pictures, just stay in one spot on the boat and take pictures. And I was able to get this shot, which you can see part of the dolphin's face, so I was pretty proud of the shot.
That's a nice picture.
Because I haven't gotten one since then. And I've tried on.
That was your moment. Everything lined up.
Imagine you're on a boat and you're trying not to fall in, first of all. But
moving
the
target.
boat's doing this. The dolphins are just all over the place. It's really tough to get that shot.
Yeah. So what are some other difficult things that you've done to keep growing? Didn't you got a black belt?
I got my black belt. I was about halfway through black belt training when I went in for my brain tumor and stroke. I call it my brain vacation. When I went to my brain vacation, I was about halfway through, and my instructor really encouraged me to get back into it. So after a period of time, I had to recover some more. But then I started going back, and yes, I had to do everything in a modified way, but I could do it. I could punch, and I can punch pretty hard with my right hand. So I could still, punch, and I could still kick. I just couldn't. I just had to hang on to make sure I didn't fall when I kicked. And eventually I did get my black belt in karate.
That is a really amazing, inspiring thing that you didn't stop. You're like, oh well, I had a stroke. I guess I don't get to have my black belt dream, but no, you've modified it and ready to do it in a way that was realistic.
And just everything I try to do is difficult, but I don't really think of it as difficult. Going to a 49er game is difficult.
So it's a lot. You have to do a lot of planning, a lot of work involved.
And you have to get a wheelchair to take it to your seat, or else this is too far of a walk.
You had a line about what walking was like.
Oh.
What is that?
When I first came home from the hospital and first really got into walking, I told my kids that walking was like $1,000 a step. So if they make me walk out of the way and go 30 steps out of the way, that's $30,000. You really want to watch when you make me walk. So I put a high value
budget.
on
You can't go over budget.
Right, I put a high value on walking. Like, you want to give me $30,000, then I'll walk out of the way. If not, lead me down a direct path.
And there was another quote that you had that it was like being on a boat.
In high heels.
No, I think it was, the one I remember was walking was like being drunk in stilts on a boat.
Right, drunk in stilts on a boat.
That's what it was.
Yes, because you're dizzy all the time, and a little seasick, because you're just dizzy all the time, and it's hard to walk when you're drunk in stilts on the boat.
I can imagine. I've never,
especially if you're on the boat, and the boat is like
walking.
Artificial grass on the boat that you're walking on. So it was tough. Walking was tough, but the only thing.
But I think that gets the idea across. Those of us that aren't dealing with those particular issues.
Right.
Just imagine what it's like every time you walk down the hallway that you had to be on a boat drunk on stilts.
A little empathy training.
Exactly.
And that's the kind of thing too that I do with my empathy training. Is I give them exercises to do that may be sort of painful to them, but oh well, And just this is how a patient's going to feel. That lack of control that the patient has.
Right.
And you're feeling a little tiny bit of it, but it gives them a little taste of it.
So you have a website for the empathy training, is that right?
Yes, impactofempathy.net.
Okay, you can put that on. Oh, here it is, impactofempathy.net.
And that will lead you to both. I do trainings for medical professionals and for schools, for trainees, for students.
Okay.
The students is actually through a nonprofit that I started called Lifetime of Impact. So I do all of those free of charge, and we've actually institutionalized it at Skyline. So I do all of Skyline's allied health programs, and I do some at Foothill College. I do mainly community colleges in the Bay Area, but I'm open to doing more. So
would this be something for just anybody would benefit though from going to this site
anybody
here?
Anybody can go to the site, and
we all could use a little more empatheticness in our lives, right?
Right. I'd love to come do a speech or a workshop, and any kind of business, any kind of employee training that you need. Because a lot of stories I hear about employees not getting along is because they're not being told to get along. They're not being encouraged to get along. They're not being trained to work together. And that's just so.
Yeah, it seems like these days people, we're all different. And sometimes those differences, even if they're just one tiny part of our life, is enough for us to kind of not get along with each other. Right. And I thought part of it is just finding that commonality that we all have. Right. And that's kind of what empathy in a way is. Put yourself in their shoes, not your shoes.
And with a lot of these trainings, you have people working together partnering up and just talking for a minute. And the other person is just listening. So working on empathetic listening, which is tough to do.
So I've just been given the 3-minute warning.
Okay.
So we should probably tell people how they can get this book, which I'm going to hold up right now and, while you tell us.
Okay, I've actually just published it on Amazon and on Amazon Kindle. And what was exciting about doing it on Amazon, because I did somewhere else earlier, was that when you do it on Amazon and do it only on Amazon, then you can be part of Kindle Unlimited, which is a subscription. So if anybody out there is an avid reader and they want to subscribe to Kindle Unlimited, they can read this book for free.
Okay, that's good. But is it also available at Florey's Books, possibly, in Pacifica here?
I don't know if it is now. It was. I actually had a book signing there when it first came out, when the first edition came out back in 2010. But I don't think they have it right now.
Okay. Well, you have another book here.
I have another thing that's also on Amazon, the Empathy Journal.
The Empathy Journal.
And this is really kind of a diary, a journal where you can write notes about things that happen to you every day, and do some venting, because it's always good to vent, but also do some accepting cranberries. You can keep track of your cranberries that you accept.
So when you do good things or good things happen, you put them in here.
Put them in here. Or what I've done too is I've made it a point to regularly have a cranberry happen, and what I chose in November was sunsets. So in the month of November, my goal was to go out at least 15 times and watch the sunset. And if I go tomorrow, I will hit my 15.
You're lucky that it hasn't been foggy.
I count those. I still count those.
Okay. You're outside.
Yes, because it's still beautiful.
It's true.
And the sunset is beautiful. Even
fog set, we call it.
Through the clouds, it's really beautiful. And I circle it on my calendar every time I do it.
And can people get the Empathy Journal on Amazon as well?
You can get the Empathy Journal on Amazon.
Well, it looks like our time is up, but I'm so glad that you came out here to tell your story with us. And if anybody wants to utilize Shari's talents, please, you can go to that website there.
Impactofempathy.net.
Impactofempathy.net.
And that's all the information is going to be there, yes.
Okay, well, thanks so much for being on the show, Shari. I really appreciate that. And I want to appreciate all of you viewers of Pacifica Community Television. Or is it Pacific Coast Television? I've been doing this too long. I'm like 10 years behind here. And also, this last few seconds, I just want to give a shout out to Bruce Latimer, who, of course, he's been the flagship show for this station for, we're about to do the 1,000th show coming up really soon. So I know he and his wife have had some health issues and stuff, but I wish them the best. And just thanks, Bruce, for everything you've done for this station. I appreciate it so much. And I want to say thanks to everybody for watching Wavelength. Remember, we're not against them, we're a forum. Good night.